All right. Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. In the interest of keeping us on schedule so that we can make sure that we return the rest of your day to you on time, we can go ahead and get started. So I wanted to begin by welcoming you all to our Schuylkill Highlands Cluster 2022 Project Showcase. We're so happy that you're all here. My name is Kate Huddlemeyer. I am the Senior Engagement Manager at the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary, and I am also the coordinator for the Schuylkill Highlands Cluster. Happy to sort of be your MC for this morning's event. Before we begin, just some quick housekeeping notes for everyone. This is a webinar format, so you will be on mute for the bulk of today's presentations. So if you have any questions for our presenters, we encourage you to submit them using the Q&A function that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. We've saved some time at the end to go over questions, so if you toss your questions in there, we'll make sure that we go through them as best we can. Additionally, if you experience any technical issues here today on the webinar, you can type those into the chat box, and my colleague Katie Evers will be sure to help you get any issues you have addressed. And so with that in mind, just wanted to quickly walk through today's agenda for you. We're going to start out with some project highlights. So we'll begin with a land preservation project that Pam Brown from French and Pickering Creeks Conservation Trust will present. From there, we'll move into a riparian buffer restoration project at the Brightside Farm with Vicki Laubach of Green Valleys Watershed Association. Kevin Coon of Charlestown Township is here with us today to talk about the Charlestown Township Open Space Program. And then we'll hear about the Ellis Woods Park plantings and restoration with Rick Traley's of Natural Land and East Coventry Township's Karen Nocella, who that duo has been making the circuit. It sounds like recently. So we're glad to have them both here with us today as well. And then we're going to round out today hearing about more ways that you can engage with our partners. Jeannie Ortiz from Audubon Mid-Atlantic will talk about the Schuylkill Highlands Plants for Birds program and some municipal return on environment studies. And then Carol Dewolfe of Natural Lands will talk about the Schuylkill Highlands Conservation Landscape Initiative and the mini grant program that they offer. And then we'll close out with Q&A, and hopefully everyone will have a wonderful Friday. So with that in mind, I wanted to introduce you to my fabulous co-hosts of the day, the core partners of the Schuylkill Highlands Cluster. They are the Stroud Water Research Center, the French and Pickering Creeks Conservation Trust, Green Valleys Watershed Association, Berks Nature, Audubon Mid-Atlantic, Natural Lands, and as I said, my organization, the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary. And these 7 partner organizations have come together under the umbrella of the Schuylkill Highlands Cluster, which is one of the 8 geographic hubs of the Delaware River Watershed Initiative, or DRWI for short, spearheaded by the William Penn Foundation. And so the big picture goals of the DRWI and in turn of the Schuylkill Highlands Cluster are to protect and restore the rivers and streams of the Delaware River watershed that provide clean water for more than 15 million people across New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. And so our main focus is on improving water quality by reducing pollutants like nutrients and sediment, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment from erosion. And we all know that in addressing those pollutants through land preservation and restoration work, we back our way into other wonderful co-benefits like improved wildlife habitat, increased recreational opportunities, and enhanced quality of life in general in our communities. And so to zoom in from the Delaware River Basin to our specific geography, the Schuylkill Highlands Cluster is nestled in northern Chester County and southern Berks County. This is the Pickering and French Creek watersheds, along with some other smaller streams that drain directly into the Schuylkill River. It covers 28 municipalities across a mosaic landscape of forests, farms, and suburban communities. And so why this geography? in particular, other than the fact that many of our core partners live and work here. We've got really high quality streams here in this region that are worth protecting. So most of the streams here in the Schuylkill Highlands cluster are either designated as high quality or exceptional value by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. These are really wonderful streams. And in large part, that's due to the impressive forest cover that we have here. From the Hopewell Big Woods and beyond, these expansive woodlands in our region, which is a bit rare in southeastern Pennsylvania and in our greater area in general, really helps provide clean water for all of us. And so the bulk of the work that the 7 partners collaborate on through the Schuylkill Highlands cluster and the Delaware River Watershed Initiative focus around 3 major strategies. The first one, and really our primary driver in this region, is land preservation. And so I just couldn't resist throwing up some beautiful pictures here. But as I mentioned, tree cover and natural areas are so important for clean water. And so preserving those areas, both in terms of the water quality benefits they provide, but also the recreational and scenic value that they provide to our landscape is really critical. And then we recognize that there are certain hotspot stressors for water quality throughout our region. And so where we have identified some of those through monitoring, water quality monitoring done by our partners, we're seeking to address those. So in particular, we're doing some farm restoration, working with particular partners at the landscape level to improve on-farm practices to benefit water quality, which in turn has other benefits for animal agriculture, livestock or land, it's Friday and I haven't apparently had enough caffeine, for livestock health, crop health, and other ancillary benefits. And then we round out our big strategies with some urban stormwater restoration. We recognize that in our geography, and especially in more of our developed areas, stormwater is an ever-present problem. And so in particular, focusing on green infrastructure, mimicking nature to help built out areas deal with stormwater is a big strategy of ours. And then we supplement those 3 big strategies with what we call complementary strategies. So these are more at the landscape scale, dealing with technical assistance for municipalities, also some smaller scale green infrastructure work, whether we're working with schools or homeowners in the Plants for Birds program, which you'll hear about later. Farmland preservation, so sort of melding the work of agricultural restoration and land preservation, coordinating directly with some of the other initiatives that are happening around the watershed and our region, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and then engaging community members in science, in getting out into the landscape, getting into streams in a lot of cases, and participating in the science that helps us understand how our waterways are doing. And I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't say that partners make it possible. So I mentioned the 7 core partners of the cluster, but this work takes so much more, and the web of partners who make this all possible is immense. And so we work directly with and receive incredible support from government agencies like DCNR, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources in Pennsylvania, the Department of Environmental Protection. There are a myriad county and municipal level programs and staff who support and directly engage in this work. There are also other regional initiatives that many of our members may be part of, or in some cases leading, that dovetail with the work of the cluster. So the Schuylkill Highlands Conservation Landscape Initiative, which we'll hear about at the end of today's presentation, the Hopewell Big Woods Partnership, the Schuylkill Action Network. There are also, as I'm sure many of you are aware, a variety of multi-municipal collaborations and more. We also don't want to forget about our private landowners and the community members who are working with us on the ground to make good things happen. And there are more that I have not mentioned, but we certainly want to acknowledge them, all of the people who make this good work to protect our rivers and streams and our quality of life possible. And so with that, I will stop sharing. And we will move on with the good stuff. You'll hear now from the experts on the ground who are doing this work. First up, I am pleased to introduce Pam Brown from the French and Pickering Creeks Conservation Trust, who is going to be telling us the really incredible story of the 18 years LLC land preservation project. So Pam, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Kate. I want to thank everyone for being with us this morning. It was my pleasure to work on this project known as 18 Years LLC. Next one, Katie. This property is 54 acres in West Vincent Township on the corners of Beaver Hill and St. Matthews Road. And this was slated for a 20-home subdivision in 2002, but it was also part of a larger 88-home subdivision that was an additional 100 acres, 50 acres on each side of St. Matthews Road. So in this latest one, two adjacent neighbors acquired it from the developer in 2020, and it took 18 years to do this acquisition. And it was a wonderful partnership with West Vincent Township contributing open space funding, Chester County, DCNR, Open Space Institute. And from the 20 housing rights, only 2 were retained in the 2-lot subdivision. And it is almost the majority of it is in agricultural, organic or agricultural use with 15 acres of woodlands. Next, please. So just to get an idea of where this is located, the red outline is 18 years, 54 acres. Just to the right, those larger open fields are 16 years LLC. This was the first project that these neighbors were able to do. To the right of the red lines is one 50-acre parcel, and just below the St. Matthews Road label is the other 50-acre parcel that also included an abandoned farm, excuse me, and agricultural outbuildings. So this was the first success in dealing with any number of developers who had options on these properties. It had reverted to the landowners, and there were 23 relatives. And when the lead neighbor thought he had the documents signed, one of the 23 relatives would not sign the agreement of sale. So it has been just an amazing ride for these now 3 partners to acquire all this land and put it under easement. The next one, please. This is just to put this property in context. The map in the middle with the 2 asterisks is the 18 years property, and the purple are preserved lands at this time when we did this project. And the purple to the left and below is all Natural Lands Project Bryn Coed Farms. And I have to say, I attribute a lot of the success to 16 and 18 years projects because of the remarkable save that Natural Lands was able to do. With an 88-home subdivision, the view shed, water quality would have been degraded, habitat would have been destroyed. And with all the efforts and the funding by many of the same partners that contributed to 16 and 18 years, this would have been a blight upon the landscape and just really changed the geography. And I'm happy to say the at that time, we also indicated our targeted projects in blue. The one to the lower right is now under easement, and the two at the top in blue have just been purchased by one of the 18 years partners. And I'm happy to say that's going to be my project in 2023. And the small aerial where you can see the buildings in the middle, that easement is being, no, to the right, yeah. That easement, that's 10 acres, that's the other partner, and they're donating that easement this year. So everything you see, other than the tiny 2-acre property that would have been surrounded by houses, they're now benefiting from this remarkable conservation shade and view. It's just fabulous. Next, please. So at the time we did the project, there was a pipe that went under Beaver Hill Road that was all overgrown, partially clogged, and had been shooting water in a straight line into the field and creating this gully. And ultimately, it was causing erosion in the stream that's in the woods at the bottom of the field. So we were able to work with Green Valleys, and thanks to Vicki Laubach, they had a grant that paid for a plan that was developed by Maori Environmental to put in a rock outlet and a grass waterway. The Open Space Institute had awarded a farm buffer grant for this project as well as for 16 years and required that we do something to address this. But we didn't have funding for the implementation. So I went to West Vincent Township, who had contributed to the purchase of the easement. Next slide, please, Katie. And they agreed to donate their manpower, machines, and material to install the rock outlet. So the view on the left is what the pipe looked like before we got started. And Beaver Hill is partially paved and the rest of it is gravel. And with the topography, everything was running down and hitting this pipe and just going in and creating this gully. So this is the beginning of the project. They cleaned it all out. They actually installed a new head on the pipe. Next one, please. And then they came in, they had extra material, and the road crew came over and they were able to install the rock outlet in 2 days. It was just wonderful that they had agreed to do that. Next, please. And then the landowner agreed to engage a private contractor and install the grass waterway. This is the completion of that. Next one. And as a result, the stream health is returning. We are hoping to also do a tree planting buffer project along the waterway. And, you know, to me, this was just a real example of persistence and partnership, because all the people that came together, it has really resulted in this amazing conservation corridor all along St. Matthews Road and beyond. So that's me. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Pam. It really is incredible to hear just the amount of effort over time that this type of work takes. And many of you in the room, I'm sure, are incredibly familiar with that. And so now that segues very nicely into our next presentation from Vicki Laubach at the Green Valleys Watershed Association. She'll be talking to us about the riparian buffer work at Brightside Farm. Take it away, Vic.
Yep, had to unmute there. Thank you very much. So Brightside Farm is a 55-acre former dairy farm purchased by Charlestown Township in 2000. The township had purchased an adjacent 20-acre parcel with a historic home and a saddle shop dating to the 18th century. And that was back in 1996. A portion of the site is, of course, under easement with French and Pickering Creeks Conservation Trust. The township preserved the farm as an agricultural asset for the residents to enjoy. There are walking trails and a community garden with access to water and completely fenced. The headwaters to the Pigeon Run, a fish and boat designated wild trout stream, and a tributary to the DEP designated high quality Pickering Creek, runs through the property. Pigeon Run was identified as one of our focus areas during the phase 2 part of the Delaware River Watershed Initiative. And Brightside was identified as a property where there were missing buffers, which are those streamside forests, but also a possible place to replant these trees to protect the stream. So you can see the blue lines there in the images. That is the tributary to the Pigeon Run, along with some springs. And you can see in 2005, it was a property that was hayed and fairly mowed. And the 2022 image on the right, you can see a lot of the regrowth around in the wetlands. This is a close-up of the tributary along with a couple of the springs, and you can see all those sort of like little lines. Those are the tree plantings, tree and shrub plantings. And this is the tree and shrub plantings next to the community garden along the stream there. So these kind of first order streams and those associated wetlands are ideal locations for buffer restorations, and they represent a huge opportunity in the Schuylkill Highlands. After several meetings with French and Pickering Creeks Conservation staff and Charlestown Township Environmental Advisory Council volunteers, as well as township consultants, we began to identify these possible areas for plantings. So the first phase planting there in blue was next to the community garden. And then the green circles are kind of the phase 2 plantings. Not all of those have been done yet. So this is what the phase 1 area looked like when we first started. You can see the fence to the community garden in the background there. And then right next to that was an old fence line that had a lot of barbed wire in it still, and a lot of invasive plants. So those big mounds are kind of multiflora rose covered by mile a minute. We initially focused on planting trees and shrubs that are fruit and berry producing native plants. And those include persimmon, pawpaw, serviceberry, elderberry, and blueberries. And the reason for that is because it is adjacent to the community garden. The EAC thought that the community garden members might utilize the fruiting plants, although birds do enjoy those same berries. This is just another shot from across the stream, looking back toward the community garden and the plantings. And other areas that have been planted in follow-on phases are those near the springs. And again, those were planted with shrubs to help protect those springs from any kind of equipment. Some of the wildlife at Brightside, so there are bird nesting boxes that attract bluebirds and tree swallows. And all of these photographs were by a Charlestown Township resident. They also have a kestrel box on the site. And the photograph in the lower left, that little kestrel chick being held by Dan Mumart from the Pennsylvania Game Commission. He banded those chicks last year. And there have been a lot of avid birders out on the site, and they have been listing the birds that they've seen on Cornell's eBird hotspot site. And there have been 63 species of birds identified at Brightside. The silver-spotted skipper and gray hair-streaked butterflies, and the bumblebee are some of the insect species that have been noted at Brightside. So Charlestown EAC did an application to Project Wingspan for some pollinator plants, and they were successful in getting those contributed. They got 300 wildflower and shrub plugs that they planted in the buffer area. And some of those plants include buttonbrush, mountain mint, milkweed, blazing star, and wild bergamot. The initial tree and shrub planting was done by Crow and Berry Land Management, a company that specializes in buffer plantings, as well as silviculture plantings. However, volunteers have been key to making the project a success. Volunteers have maintained the tree protection, removed invasive plants, replanted where needed, and added new plants, sought additional funding through grants, worked with township staff and contractors, and are currently working with the Academy of Natural Sciences to collect water samples from the stream as part of the Academy's Project Impact Assessment grant. The EAC also worked with the Chester County Coordinator of the Penn State Master Watershed Stewards Program to create educational signage, which is critical to let park users know why this work is being done. And of course, the sign was paid for by the Chester County Conservation District. Funding for the buffer project came from the Conservation District's multifunction buffer grant that is supported by the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Green Valley's Watershed Association's National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and the Fairmount Conservancy that Jeannie from Pennsylvania, from Audubon Mid-Atlantic introduced us to. Residents have a greater awareness of the township's EAC, which is relatively young. I think it's about just 3 or 4 years old. And they are currently working with the township's Park and Rec Committee to start a Weed Warrior program, which has its first volunteer day on April 2nd. They are going to be going after the multiflora rose. A direct outcome of the work at Brightside was that the EAC was able to get permission from the Deerfield Homeowners Association, which is directly across the street from Brightside, to plant a portion of the homeowner open space to protect the spring run, which is the very headwater to the Pigeon Run tributary. And this is what it looks like after that was planted. You can see that little run right through the middle. And it is being cared for by one of the Deerfield homeowners who brings his tractor out to water. So I would certainly like to thank the Township, Board of Supervisors, EAC, and volunteers for all of their support for getting this project on the ground. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Vic. Some of those photos were just stunning, and I am so excited for spring and to see that again in our landscape. And so next up, we are so pleased to have Kevin Coon with us today from Charlestown Township. He's going to be talking with us about the Charlestown Township Open Space Program. And so without further ado, Kevin, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you and good morning. Pam asked that I provide an overview of the Township's open space program. And it was actually, I should back up and start by explaining the background you see here. If you drive down Route 29 and past the entrance of Charlestown Hunt, you'll see the remains of a dam that broke, I believe, in the mid-40s. This is a picture of that area before the dam broke. That's why it's referred to as the ice dam. Back at the turn of the century, and I guess up until the early 40s, they harvested ice off of this area. So that's, I guess that was some of our original open space. But putting this together was a good refresher for me because I really hadn't looked back at what we'd have been able to accomplish over the 23 years as a result of our residents' willingness to have shown with their pocketbooks how important land preservation was to them. We're a township that's about 12 and a half square miles, approximately 8,000 acres. And in 2020, we had a little over, by the 2020 census, we had a little over 2,100 households and about 6,000 residents. The open space program began full force in 1999 when the Board of Supervisors prioritized permanent preservation as a way, for as much as of the township as possible, as a way to maintain the bucolic nature of the township and also at the same time permanently reduce our ongoing costs of running a municipality. I think currently we have about 4 part-time employees and 1 full-time employee, 2 full-time employees. Back in '99, we had about 1,400 acres of the township were preserved. This was in the form of parks, some open space in large developments, and easements that have been donated over the years. A lot of that credit goes to Eleanor Morris. In 2000, the township borrowed $2.1 million to purchase the Brightside Farm that Vicki talked about earlier. That is now, it's on Yellow Springs Road and is now referred to as the Brightside Farm Park, as a 1-mile paved walking trail. In 2004, the Board of Supervisors instituted a 0.5% earned income tax that was dedicated to the preservation of open space and provided residents an opportunity rather than going to developers to sell their development rights to the municipality. In 2005, we borrowed $9 million through municipal bonds. And in 2008, we went back to the residents to increase the earned income tax an additional 0.5% to a full 1%. That went on a referendum and was approved by a 77% margin. As of January of this year, the township has permanently preserved 3,188 acres, or 40% of the township. And we have currently about 259 acres in process that should close by the end of 2023. To date, our residents have funded $32 million worth of conservation projects through the earned income tax. And in addition to the $32 million, we have applied for and received an additional $3 million in grants. For me, it all started back in the mid-90s. I had the privilege of serving on the board of the French and Pickering Creeks Trust when Eleanor Morris would tell anyone who'd listen, which was anybody if you were in Eleanor's presence, that they aren't making any more dirt. And that really struck a tone with me. One of my cohorts on the planning commission, Andy Motel and I, Andy's worked with me on a lot of the projects and really helped us get this off the ground back in the late 90s. We've often joked that for Charlestown, it was really a perfect storm because we had a very receptive residents to maintaining open space in the late 90s. We also had a real estate market that sort of tanked. Interest rates were low, so borrowing was cheap. And for us, it all came together. And we're very fortunate that way. It was slow to catch on. But once residents realized that we had money in our pocket to spend and more of their neighbors were doing it, it really caught on. Another great piece of advice we got early on from a good friend and a resident, Bill Anderson, whose wife Liz, I think, is a recent inductee to the board of the Friendship Book. And they also run the Charlestown CSA. Bill said, don't be a pest, but don't go away either. So we just kind of kept in touch with residents over the years, planted some seeds. And, you know, oftentimes what we found is while we didn't have luck the first time out of the gates, as family situation changes, as individuals retired, as there were people passed along in families, the township was a ready source of cash for individuals that wanted an alternative to responding to a Toll Brothers letter. So our goal moving forward is to complete the few opportunities that are left, fortunately, and then ratchet back the earned income tax and reduce our taxes. So that's our program.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you again so much for being here this morning with us, and of course for all the incredible work that you and the township do.
Thank you. I should also mention that probably 80 or 90% of our projects in the past 23 years have been with the trust. They're easy. Pam's laser focus on details and getting the job done certainly doesn't go unnoticed. She's been a great partner.
Well, we certainly agree, but we're a little biased. Keeping us moving right along. Next up on our agenda, we have Rick Trailers from Natural Lands and Karen Nacella from East Coventry Township. Thank you so much for being here, both of you. I know both of you were presenting last night, so we appreciate back-to-back speaking engagements that you have for us today. But you'll be talking about the Ellis Woods Park restoration and plantings, and I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kate. Before I get into Ellis Woods Park in detail, we want to let Karen speak a little bit about a lot of the recent successes in East Coventry Township. I've been the planner for East Coventry for about 7 years now, and when I took them on as a client, I didn't know much about the community, but over those past 7 years, I've watched them conserve land, plan and build trails, improve their parks, protect their streams, improve their ordinances. They've really done a lot of great conservation work, and Karen is behind a lot of it. Part of the reason we're doing this project showcase is to show other municipalities and landowners how they can use this DRWI money, and East Coventry has taken advantage of that funding in many ways. So I want to turn it over to Karen to just talk about how they've used some of the funding and talk about some of their conservation successes. Karen.
Thanks, Rick. Let me just start out by saying a lot of this wouldn't be possible except for you and Jack and Pam Brown. I just pick up the phone and call somebody, and you guys always have an answer. And you know me, I like it to happen like in the next 20 minutes, okay? But I guess it all started, I was on Parks and Rec for such a long time, and we were sitting around the table one day, and I said, dudes, if you don't have money, we can't even buy a trash can, okay? So we got to get an open space referendum. So that's kind of where it kicked off from. In 2011, we did get the 0.25 of 1% of your earned income tax. We got that passed in 2011. And that was like one of the most exciting things that's ever happened in my life. It was just, I couldn't believe I won. And when I was talking to Pam and talking to Claire, they're like, how did you do that? I mean, it's like, but we did it. We did it. The Parks and Rec team was a great team, and we did it. And once we did that, the doors opened up because we realized that we had to have matching money too for a lot of these grants. Just like when you came in to enhance Ellis Woods Park, I realized that we had to have matching funds. And you have more credibility when you have money and you can match. So Ellis Woods was an okay park. It was all right, but it kind of looked very bare and barren, and we wanted to enhance it. So when you came to the table, Rick, and said, hey, look, we can get this money from the William Penn, we were like, okay, we love money. We love money. We know what money can do. And then with the DCNR grant, we put in the benches. The landscaping is amazing. And then we got a Schuylkill Highlands mini grant, and we were able to do all the signage in Ellis Woods Park. And we partnered up with Jocelyn. Jocelyn and Carl were very instrumental in helping us do all the signage in the park. And now I believe we're really on the map when it comes to bird watching and the interpretive signs. You can come to one of our beautiful kiosks when you first get into the park and pick up a pamphlet. There's been over 100 birds identified in Ellis Woods Park. So we're really, really proud of Ellis Woods Park. And I guess just that, and then just engaging with you, Rick, and finding out there's so much more out there. And I do have regrets. I have regrets that I didn't do this sooner, because I now ride past developments that I was speaking about last night. It's like, oh my God, this is horrible. All these houses spread out all over the place, and no one wants to have all these lawns to mow anymore. And I know people like smaller acreage. It's easier to maintain, take care of. So growing greener is perfect. And I just can't wait though until you get it completed. So we can take advantage of all the things that is in that ordinance of growing greener, like we are going to hold them to the fire, right, Rick? And we're going to have trails, because one of my passions is having connecting trails, and it's just expanding. It's just moving out from this core area of where we've conserved. Since we passed the open space referendum in 2011, I think we've conserved over 200 acres. And the majority of that, there's all been trails on it. And the public works group is, I don't know why, they're just all caught up in the enthusiasm, and they're perfect. I mean, we just have to call them when we're out hacking and say, hey, look, a trail fell down. Can you come out, guys? We need this picked up, or we got to jump over it with our horses. They're there the next day, they're cleaning. So it's a great place to live. And my whole goal is quality of life in East Coventry Township. And I think the Parks and Rec Committee and the Open Space Committee is making an impact. You are, Pam, Jack, everybody's making an impact. One thing I just have to say, I know that Pico was kind of like poo-pooing these trails. And this is when, this has been a while, but Jack was very instrumental in getting that Pico line trail from Bishop Road all the way through Matt Culp's property. And then I donated the back of my property. We made that, it's only 150 feet, but then it goes into the Usler property, which is 80 acres. That took me 30 years, but I did it, okay? I did it, and we got that. And now we have a loop trail around that, which goes into the Mac property, and we're just expanding out from that. So it's exciting, and I just want to thank you and Pam and Jack and Carol for all her help, and the signage is beautiful. Thank you, Carol, for the signage. It's a team effort, and I'm happy and proud to live in East Coventry Township. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. You're doing a great job, as are everyone you mentioned. I'll throw in your planning commission too.
Yes.
Talking about growing greener conservation subdivision. You have a planning commission that gets it, that also understands quality of life, open space, trails. They get it. And that's part of why it's taking so long, because they're very detail oriented and they want to get it right. But you're going to end up with a great product there. But we better keep moving. And so now let's talk specifically about Ellis Woods Park. I'm assuming everyone is seeing my shared screen now.
Yep.
Great. I see a couple nodding heads. Thank you. So we're going to talk about Ellis Woods Park in East Coventry Township. Here's one of the beautiful new signs Karen's been talking about. And just to take a minute to orient you, in case you don't know where East Coventry Township is, it's in the northern corner of Chester County, surrounded by North and South Coventry, East Vincent, Limerick, and right across the river from Pottstown. The parcel we're going to be talking about, the park, is right here in the center of the trails map, number 8, and it's connected to an important open space, number 9, the Creek View open space. This is the township's official trail map, and you can see the number of trails that either exist or are proposed to connect into that park or encircle that park. So it's really an important park for trails and for recreation and for its location right in the center of the township. It's also the home of their township building. So anytime residents have township business, they come in and out of that park. I hope you can see my cursor, but in about the top third and over towards the left, you'll see the actual park connected to, this is the backside of the park with some woodlands, some open grass, and the lotted out but undeveloped area sort of in the right center of the screen is the Creek View open space. Township owns that now. Those lots, I don't know if they've been formally extinguished, but they won't be developed. So again, it's an important park for connections to open space as well. And this is what it looked like. This is an older aerial, probably from 2017 or so. And you can see from the aerial that the park has very, very few trees or shrubs. It's mostly mowed grass. It also functions as the township building and the Center for Public Works. So Public Works is storing their equipment, their trucks there. The police headquarters is also there. So there's a lot going on at this site. And generally, this is what it looked like 2 or 3 years ago. Sort of barren, as Karen said. This park it was always a nice park. It was well designed. I believe that Ann Toole and Ann Yost designed the park. Carl Kellerman also did a landscape plan when the park was developed, or when the park was designed, but for some reason the landscaping never got installed and the landscape plan sort of got lost. The park had lots of mowed grass. The basins were originally planned to be meadow basins, but the meadows were never installed. You can see in the photos in the bottom, the basins get wet, but the tractors still go in to mow. They leave ruts. The grass erodes. They're a bit of a mess. There are steep slopes with just grass, lots of just expansive grass without any buffers between neighboring sites, lots of blank building facades. There are also existing stormwater swales that are, again, just grass. And this is the same swale from 2 different angles. Lots of water flows off the adjacent parking lots right into these swales. As it was before we implemented the new plan, plenty of erosion there. You can imagine all the grass clippings wash into the waterways there. We know that's a problem. Those clippings carry nitrogen, phosphorus, cause all kinds of problems for water quality. So then we did a landscape plan. And you don't need to read all of the details of this plan, but hopefully you can see the difference of what's proposed on this plan versus the aerial you saw a few minutes ago. Lots and lots of proposed trees along the edges of the park to buffer some of those neighboring uses. Lots of shrubs in and around the playgrounds and around the recreational uses. New foundation plantings around the township building. The basins, which are up front along Ellis Woods Road, get vegetated. This large basin back here, which is really pretty flat, also gets vegetated. And then we install a new meadow all the way over at the right and up the top with a grass walking path around it. And unfortunately, I don't have a ton of great photos of the site, and new landscaping is difficult to photograph. And surprise, a rainy day in March isn't the best day to go out either. But hopefully, even with the bare trees, you can see some of the difference. We installed 16 new benches around the park. Before that, I think there were maybe 0. Well, there's actually a couple near the playground. But now there are a mix of benches, some with backs, some backless, so people can either sit and face the trail or face the pickleball courts. When these trees get a little bit bigger and leaf out, they'll provide really nice shade and a really nice alley effect along the trails through the park. They'll also give some shade to the pickleball and basketball players. We've provided a lot of new landscaping to help hide that long, big white facade of the utility building back there. We also were sure when we installed our benches to leave a little bit of an extra pad to meet ADA requirements. The township installed some new, more rustic benches near their nature trail, and they also followed suit by planting a few native serviceberry trees at that area, connecting the native plant palette that we installed throughout the rest of the park into their natural area. I had mentioned there's utilitarian storage areas. We've planted lots of evergreens to help buffer those lines up. It's going to take a while for these trees to fill in and really create a good solid buffer, but we have time. We did a lot of plantings along the playground edges as well. We did a park rec open space plan for the township about 6 years ago, and one thing we heard from the public was that the playground equipment gets so hot in the summer they can't use it. So we really made it a focus to try to plant around the playgrounds to provide more shade and more beauty around those playgrounds. Again, more buffer shrubbery along fences along the buildings. We also used some funding to install a Gaga pit. This is a game, it's sort of like dodgeball, but you have to be in this circle. My kids are 7 and 9. They love it. I don't really get it, but they love it. So good for kids, not for me, but that's good. As Karen and Carol had already talked about, the township followed up by doing a really nice designed and unified signage system. The signage system helps to orient people in the park, point them to the trails, but also give them a little bit of information about birds and nature at the site. So to summarize, we use the DRWI funds to pay for my time to prepare the landscape plan. We also use DRWI funds to pay for my time in preparing the DCNR application. DCNR applications now are due in a couple of weeks, so I'm sure some of you are multitasking during this meeting and you understand what a big lift a DCNR grant application is. So to have money to pay for time to do that is really helpful. Then the township did actually get that DCNR grant. Township matched that funding and it ended up resulting in 100+ new trees on the site, 85+ new native shrubs, 500 native grasses and perennials, about an acre of new meadows and basin bottoms, 16 new benches, 1 new Gaga pit. And all of those plantings are going to help do a better job of managing stormwater at that park, cleaning the water, and getting it into the ground rather than into our streams. So I think this really was a great and impactful use of the DRWI funds. A great job by the township. We had to work with Karen's Park and Rec Conservation Committee. We worked with pickleball players. We worked with the Director of Public Works, who is also a supervisor, so we have to keep him happy. It was really a great project. And like I said, I don't think my photos do it justice. So I would encourage all of you to stop by and visit the park and explore the township's open spaces as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rick and Karen, to both of you for all of your work on this project and many more. We really appreciate you being here with us this morning. And so now we're going to transition to the second half of our agenda, which is looking at future ways and opportunities for you to engage with some of our partners. So I will turn it over to Jeannie Ortiz, who is with Audubon Mid-Atlantic. She's got a couple of programs that she's going to talk with you about today. So Jeannie, take it away.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. As Kate mentioned, I'm going to briefly talk to you about 2 programs that Audubon worked on over the last few years. The first one is Return on Environment. We completed 5 return on environment studies for townships in the Schuylkill Highlands cluster. And the ROE study asked, what is nature worth in terms of dollars? So 1 study for 5 different townships, or 1 for each. So the reason we calculate ROE is because natural system services and the benefits of natural resources are not accounted for when policy and land use decisions are made. So for example, if you attend a municipal meeting and a developer comes up and proposes a development and talks about the taxes and the jobs, which are important, there's no accounting for the natural resources and the benefits that they provide on that site. So they're really just not accounted for at all. They have no value. So in our studies, we value 4 things. The avoided cost from natural system services. For example, if a woodlot is filtering the air, providing stormwater management, if people are walking through it and saving on healthcare because they're staying healthy, then we want to put a value on those. So we calculate the avoided costs from natural system services, for example, stormwater management, the revenue from local recreation. Again, the example, someone getting out and staying fit in the park that Rick just talked about. When they're out there in these resources, they're staying healthier and saving on healthcare and bringing in revenue. So if you visit Ellis Woods, you meet somebody for breakfast, or you stop and buy a pair of sneakers, then that's local revenue. We're not talking about tourism. Those dollars are already accounted for. And then finally, open space premiums. If a house is located next to or within proximity of open space, or as we've discovered, clean water, then those property values rise, and that is a benefit to the township. So the goal of the return on environment studies is to start factoring in what natural resources bring to the table when policy and land use decisions are made, so that you have full information when you are making these types of decisions. So we did 5 studies. We did West Vincent, West Pikeland, and East Coventry and Chester County. And we did studies too in Berks County, Union and Robinson. So there are a lot of numbers on the screen, but if you focused on the bottom left, I averaged the numbers. So on average, between these 5 townships, the natural system services were worth $21 million a year. Again, those are services like stormwater management, cleaning the air, pollination. We also calculated the value of the riparian buffers in these townships, and it was about, on average, $4 million a year. The local outdoor recreation was worth 8, and healthcare savings 3 million. So the beauty of the studies too is that we can map the data. So on the screen, you see the map from West Vincent Township. The areas in gold are the highest value return on environment parcels, and they are always associated with wet features, such as wetlands, riparian buffers. Those are always your highest value for a return on environment perspective. Followed by, in this example, the highest would be in the gold along the streams, and then to the north, also valuable, the forest in the township. So we can map it. You can use the mapping for planning and for land use decision-making. And then finally, we left the townships with a fact sheet that they can share with their community. So on the front side of the fact sheet are the values for the West Vincent Township Return on Environment Study with some beautiful local pictures. And then on the flip side, we map the return on environment results, and we put that on a map with the trails and the protected open space and the parks, and we call this a green ribbon landscape. So you get a picture of what you have, and from a return on environment standpoint, what's most valuable in the township. And then at the bottom, to engage residents, we encourage the planting of native plants, to share and maybe swap plants, and to get involved in their local community so that you're protecting what you have, and you also can continue to engage your residents and build your return on environment too. The second project we work on is the Plants for Birds program, and we did this for a couple years, and I just want to say it will be available over the next 3 years with renewed William Penn funding. We will get this program ramped up and available to you in the near future. Bird-friendly communities, in order to participate in the program, a resident has to be within the cluster, and Kate showed the cluster boundaries at the beginning of our meeting today. So you have to be within the cluster and have a stream on your property. We have a website for the project, and you can see the address there at the top of the screen. On that webpage, there's a brief video about the program. You can register for the Plants for Birds program, and you can answer questions that help us ensure that you are eligible. And when you register, you get to pick one of 4 different types of plant kits. And this is why it's important and a criteria that you have a stream on your property, so that when the plants are installed along the stream, they're helping reach the goal of protecting water quality. So anybody that's eligible gets a free plant kit with about 6 plants. And typically we have a day where we deliver the plants to the township, and then people come and pick them up that have registered. And this is the results from the last couple of years. You can see 43 participants engaged in the program. We planted 258 native plants. And then to tie this back to the ROE, you can see that the plants are going in those wet features along the riparian corridors and preserving and building your return on environment, protecting the streams, and helping build connectivity from property to property. And I'm going to close it out. Katie is going to share a video, and we thought this would be one of the best ways to show you the impact of the program.
Thank you for, piquing my interest in native plants and shrubs and trees. Once I came across the Plants for Birds program, I started reading other articles online. I had thought that native plants were, wild and just green and not interesting looking, but no, I think these native plants are just as interesting as anything exotic, and of course, way more beneficial to the local environment. It's nice to come out here with a cup of coffee and watch all the birds, especially early in the morning. The cardinal flower is really cool because the hummingbirds visit it. Once you see a hummingbird, up close, it's pretty cool. Because from far away, it appears to be like a locust or something, or some kind of large insect. Then you realize it's a bird. And I have a hummingbird feeder here, but they don't. I've seen the birds more at our bee balm and our cardinal flowers more, which is the point, of course. So if everybody would plant just a couple of native plants on their lawn, that effect would really, go a long ways to preserving our, what remains of the natural ecosystem. Stony Run borders our property. I've spent a lot of time with my kids back there, with our family. We go exploring back there. We see ducks, animals, bugs, all kinds of things back there, and we take walks in the creek. We put on our water shoes and just slowly walk through the creek. And they're holding my hands while they do it. It's great because what I've learned is that how far down the root systems of these native plants go into the ground compared to regular grasses and non-native plants. So by planting these native plants and shrubs on my property, which slopes down into a wetland that feeds into Stony Run, we are essentially purifying a little bit of that water that goes into our streams, our rivers, and that goes into our public drinking systems. Everybody wins. You plant, you beautify your property, and you also benefit the animals, the food web, the food chain, and all the birds and the bees and the pollinators. So there is no downside to it.
So thank you. That's what I have for you today. And again, be on the lookout for the program. It'll be rolling out again this year, and we hope to get many of you engaged in this program.
Thanks so much, Jeannie. And we'll be sure, as information about that program comes out for this next round, we can certainly share that with all of you. So stay tuned. And then last but certainly not least on our agenda this morning is Carol Dewolfe from Natural Lands. She leads the Schuylkill Highlands Landscape Conservation Initiative, and they have this fabulous mini grant program that Carol will be sharing with us today. And I Carol, with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you bring up the slide for the Schuylkill Highlands mini grant page? Hello, everyone. I'm following some wonderful pictures and all this great project work. And my message is there's still a lot more to do. And some of the funding sources, one good one among others is the Schuylkill Highlands mini grant program. And the Schuylkill Highlands was started about 14 years ago with Pennsylvania DCNR, that's the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, to kind of identify areas in Pennsylvania that they are going to be collaborating and doing a lot more work. And we have 3 goals. One is connecting to nature, completing the interconnected trail network, amenities for the trails, and we have about 35 partners working on about 60 some different trails in the 6-county area that we focus in. And the second goal, as you can see on the screen, is to encourage compatible economic development, and that's from Valley Forge to Reading, and inclusive of the Hopewell Big Woods, the Ole Valley, but a lot of the towns and the amenities that are going on to ready ourselves for nature-based tourism. We've been working through that goal to complete a lot of projects in the landscape. And the last one is land and water conservation funding projects, conservation landscape projects, stewardship and restoration. So those 3 goals are sort of all of the areas that you can get a grant to implement projects. And so the next mini grant program, we just announced it, the grants are due on May 13th. And we fund up to $15,000. You have to match it. So it would be a $30,000 project then. I would encourage you to let me know if you have any projects that you're interested in, and we can tell you if you're eligible. First of all, we only cover grants within the Schuylkill Highlands Conservation Landscape, and that map is way below on this schuylkillhighlands.org website. And so some of the projects you can see on the website, if you reference that, the mini grant program itself is electronic now. And so it's all online. It's very easy. It's not a long drawn out process to apply. And any of your projects in this Schuylkill Highlands region that advance any of our goals is eligible. So I'd include the people eligible normally that apply are the counties, the municipalities, nonprofits, friends groups, some schools, etc. And the projects are varied, and you can see some of them in our website if you want to learn more, get ideas. But yeah, please check it out. If you have any questions, you can contact me. I'm also online, Carol Dewolfe. I work at Natural Lands, and I've been the director of the Schuylkill Highlands Conservation Landscape for about 14 years now. And recently, we just did an analysis and metrics for the past 14 years. And if I look at the impact that this program has had in the landscape, it's simply phenomenal. And the partners that are taking up great work and making our landscape more sustainable, keep creating places for people to recreate, and therefore relating to our impacts on their health and well-being are pretty phenomenal. I'm not going to go into it because it's the end of a very long session that you've been attending, and everything you will need to know is online at the website. So apply for a grant.
Thanks, Carol. And so I want to take a minute once again to thank all of our presenters today for the fabulous work that they've done on the projects that we've talked about, the work that was showcased here today, and also for their incredible commitment to work in this landscape that improves our natural resources, our water quality, and ultimately the quality of life for the people who live, work, and play here in our Schuylkill Highlands region. Once again, many, many thanks to all of our speakers today, and thank you all for attending. We know that time is precious, especially on a Friday afternoon that will hopefully dry out a little bit and become a bit warmer. But we are so appreciative for you being here with us today. So many of you on the call are our partners and our colleagues, and we have appreciated so much the opportunity to work with you up until this point, and we look very much forward to working with you in the future. So please do not hesitate to reach out if you have questions that come up after this. We will send out a follow-up email with more information, but certainly don't hesitate to contact any of us if there's anything else that we can do for you. And with that, I think we can end a little bit early and release you back to the rest of your day and hopefully a wonderful weekend. So thank you all so much. Take care.